All right, welcome back. We've journeyed through the Bitcoin metabolism. We've looked at the organism, we've diagnosed the illness, and we've even charted the transition. Now in this part, we're going to tackle the biggest question of all. What comes after? What does a civilization actually look like once its metabolism is finally restored to health? So let's really get into it. For a few minutes, let's just set aside all the turbulence and chaos of the transition itself and really focus on the destination. What does a healthy, functioning civilization actually look and feel like on the other side of this whole metabolic recovery? You know, the first thing to get straight is that we are not talking about some kind of science fiction utopia. This isn't about flying cars or a perfect society where everyone's happy all the time. The argument here is for something, well, maybe a lot more profound and definitely more realistic. A world that is simply functional. A world where the basic systems just work the way they're supposed to. So what is the central idea behind this recovery? What's the secret sauce? Well, it's a fundamental shift in our relationship with reality itself. It's all about moving from a system that actively fights against the laws of physics to one that actually works in harmony with them. Just think about this contrast for a second. The old system, the one we're in now, is fueled by ever-expanding debt. It's in the state of permanent frantic acceleration. It's like a machine that's trying to outrun the laws of thermodynamics. It's impossible. But the new system, because it's anchored in something finite, it doesn't fight. It aligns. It shifts the entire civilization from this chaotic sprint to a stable, coordinated flow. So what does this alignment actually change in the real world? Well, it starts at the very foundation of how we organize ourselves as a society. We're talking about our relationship with time, our use of energy, and even the physical shape of our cities. In the system we have now, debt completely distorts our perception of time. It's all short-term, frantic, speculative. We're constantly pulling energy from the future to fuel today. A Bitcoin-aligned world flips this completely on its head. When you have a reliable way to save your economic energy, you can actually afford to be patient. Time itself, not the next loan, becomes the main way we coordinate what we do. And just look at the consequences of this shift in thinking. When a society can think long-term, everything changes. We start building things to last. We start actually considering the world we're leaving for our kids and grandkids. Politics and business can finally escape the tyranny of the next quarterly report, and the entire rhythm of civilization can slope down from a panicked sprint to a confident, stable pace. Now, this long-term thinking also revolutionizes our relationship with energy. And here's a really crucial engineering concept. Think of Bitcoin miners as this unique kind of customer for energy. They can turn on or off instantly anywhere in the world, and they're always looking for the cheapest, most abundant power. So in effect, they create a global metabolic buffer, like a giant shock absorber for our energy grids. And the results of having this buffer are just profound. It makes renewables like solar and wind way more economical because it can absorb all their intermittent surpluses. It means that stranded energy in remote locations is no longer wasted. It stabilizes the entire grid, and it provides a steady, reliable revenue source for energy producers, which encourages more investment. Basically, our civilization's energy metabolism becomes incredibly efficient. No more waste. All right, let's talk about cities. Why do they look the way they do? Well, a huge part of it, a part we don't often talk about, is that our financial system has this, well, pathological need for collateral. Buildings and land, they aren't just for living and working. They're financial instruments sitting on a bank's balance sheet. So what happens when a new technology means people no longer have to use their house as their primary savings account? Well, the argument is that a quiet revolution starts to happen. When land isn't being treated like a speculative financial asset, housing can become dramatically more affordable. Cities can decentralize, and architecture can finally start responding to human needs instead of just the demands of bond markets. Okay, so with these new foundations of time, energy, and cities all reshaped, let's look at the larger structures we build on top of them, our institutions, everything from supply chains to governments. Today's supply chains, they're optimized for one thing and one thing only, the lowest possible cost right now. This financial logic creates these long, brittle chains that are incredibly vulnerable to disruption, as we've all seen. A system based on sound money, though, sends clear, physics-consistent cost signals. The whole game shifts from cheapest to most resilient. Supply chains get shorter, more local, and a whole lot less fragile. This exact same principle of limits also applies to government. A debt-based system allows governments to expand almost indefinitely, right? They just create more money to cover their costs. But when that ability is removed, a natural boundary appears. And this isn't an ideological point, it's just about metabolic pressure. Governments are forced to focus on their truly vital functions. They become like organs, instead of metastasizing and harming the entire organism. This brings us to some of the most profound shifts of all, ones that touch on the very definitions of what wealth and trust even are in a society. This fundamentally changes the rules of the game for creating wealth. I mean, in the old system, success so often depends on your proximity to the money printer. Getting access to cheap credit, using complex financial engineering, riding these massive asset bubbles. But in the new system, without that distortion, the path to wealth realigns with productive activity, with real savings, and with genuine long-term building. Merit comes back into the picture. And that brings us to trust. The source material uses this really powerful metaphor. When an organism can no longer sense reality, it's a clear sign of disease. In our legacy system, where accounting can be manipulated and data is constantly being engineered, truth becomes flexible. The whole system loses its sensory clarity. And this creates such a stark contrast. The old system is built on pillars of promises, on flexible narratives and engineered data. The new system, on the other hand, is built on pillars of proof, verifiable truth, a fixed supply, and value that is anchored by real-world energy expenditure. You can't fake it. And when truth becomes the actual substrate of the system, you get something incredible: structural trust. It's not the kind of trust that's enforced by a regulator or based on a politician's promise. No, it's trust that just emerges organically from the system's design itself, making cooperation almost effortless. So what does all of this, stable time, honest money, structural trust, what does it actually mean for the individual, for you and for me? This is really where the metabolic healing becomes deeply personal. The debt-based metabolism forces us all into this state of hyperactivity. We have to run faster and faster just to stay in the same place. But when your savings actually hold and grow their value, that pressure just releases. You can finally step off the hamster wheel. Frantic work can be replaced by meaningful work, burnout declines, and space finally opens up for the things that make us human: art, community, curiosity. And let's bring it right back to where we started. This is not a vision of perfection. Humans will still be humans. The world won't magically become a utopia. But the argument is that the foundation, that metabolic layer, will finally be sound. The world becomes functional again. And what are the hallmarks of this functional civilization? Well, it's truthful, it's stable, it's coherent. Its incentives are aligned with the physics of energy. It's anti-fragile, meaning it grows stronger from shocks instead of breaking. And it's self-regulating, with feedback loops that promote health instead of disease. It's a world that, just feels sane again. And this brings us to the really powerful idea of this entire series. The transition to a world with a healthy metabolism isn't about tearing the old world down in some violent revolution. It's about healing. It's about restoring the conditions that allow a complex, beautiful civilization to thrive. Bitcoin isn't the revolution. Bitcoin is the recovery.